Nutting. It's a term that has one meaning if you're in a dorm room, and a very different one in the world of MLB. In baseball, nutting refers to the practice of pocketing money through revenue sharing with no intention of actually improving the team. It brings great pleasure to owners like Bob Nutting, who perfected this dark art as honcho of the hapless Pittsburgh Pirates. In his honor, this is where we get the term. By many accounts, there's a lot of nutting going on in MLB. As the saying goes, if you don't stop, you'll go blind. Except the only ones being robbed blind here are fans in places like Denver, Oakland, Seattle, and of course Pittsburgh, who spend good money to watch mediocre to at times outright abysmal baseball year after year. In places like Atlanta, those fans get rewarded with rare feats of athletic marvel. Ronald Acuna, Spencer Strider, Matt Olson, these players justify the price of a ticket alone. But in too many cities, fans are paying to see, well, it's hard to say what exactly. Not rebuilding or reloading, though sometimes this does successfully happen. Not tanking, where teams try to lose on purpose to better a draft position, though that certainly is part of the game's fabric. Instead, they see sloth, they see laziness, not from the players, who are among the best in the world at what they do, even playing on mediocre teams. Instead, from the front office, fans see the incredible greed of owners who will win in the end no matter how many losses their teams suffer, by sitting on their hands as dollar bills are stuffed into their pocketbooks. Before free agency, players would have to go to great lengths to get even a $1,000 raise. Owners had all the power and wanted to keep most of the money. In 1974, only 20.4% of the game's revenues went to player salaries. By 2001, it was 54.1%. Problem solved? Not quite. Even after Curt Flood drowned the reserve clause, and in doing so invented our modern concept of MLB free agency, owners still wanted to keep the power and the money. Big surprise. The question is, how do they get away with it after that? How can a team like the Seattle Mariners make a huge profit while not making it to the World Series? Ever? Shouldn't there be some kind of penalty for sucking? Nope. It all goes back to the original sin of nutting. Trigger warning, the following contains scenes of gross negligence and full frontal stupidity. But before we get more into that dark topic, let's explore something a little bit more fun. Today's sponsor, Sportrix, the app to play unlimited sports grid games. Now, instead of telling you all about this in a straightforward ad read, I figured I'd instead show you a recent 2-minute challenge I completed instead. Yankees, Pirates. Go McCutchen here. Ramirez, JB Shuck, Lou Trevino, Elvis Andrus, Alex Rodriguez, the Cubs, Sammy Sosa, Frank Thomas, wrong Frank Thomas, Fernando Rodney. Okay, on to the new grid. Jake Arrieta, Zach Greinke, Nationals, Astros, Maxwell. Couldn't quite get it. If you want to try your hand at beating this score, check out the link in either my pinned comment or description and download Sportrix. Now, back to our video. Let's take a trip back in time to the 1990s. It was a given that teams that spent the most won. Just look at the year 1999. The AL's best teams were New York, Cleveland, and Texas, and not coincidentally, they were the AL's 3 biggest spenders. The game seemed at the time to be in danger of the perpetual haves and have-nots, fueled by asymmetric TV deals in big market cities. The Yankees launched their own network in 2002, further creating anxiety for small market teams. How could they ever keep pace? Was it good for baseball if the Red Sox and Yankees battled it out every year for the pennant, while the Mets and Braves did the same in the NL? The issue centered on local revenues, money generated from TV, radio, ticket sales, merch, concessions, parking, spring training, and the teams in the big markets dominated in the bottom line. Of course they would. A city like New York has about 9 million people, almost doubly as many as the entire state of Colorado, where the Rockies reside. How could the game restore balance? The answer was deemed to be in the pooling of these local revenues. Each team would kick in 34% of their take and then split up the cash equally. By 2007, $312 million was being transferred from high revenue teams to low revenue teams. A competitive balance tax, or luxury tax, was instituted in 2002, and it was at the time, and is still to this day, designed to punish teams that go over certain payroll thresholds. In 2022, that bar was $230 million, with 6 separate orgs blowing past that number: the Mets, Dodgers, Phillies, Yankees, Red Sox, and Padres. The tax is complicated, as it's based not only on how far teams eclipse the threshold, but also for how many years they've done so. Then, half of that tax flows to teams that remain under over the threshold. Academic research has proven again and again that the more a team spends, the more wins it will attain. Again, this is not an average over a long span of time, so get in all of your 2023 Padres and Mets jokes now. The truth is, despite the romanticism of Moneyball philosophy, the relationship between payroll and wins is more robust than ever. In other words, MLB has fixed the system so all teams can go out and spend what they need to put a competitive team on the field. Yet, clearly, this hasn't been happening since. Why? Losing games on purpose is now known as tanking, with the word first appearing as such in professional tennis, when players would just slug balls out of bounds to end the agony of losing faster. Every sports league has its version of it, and baseball through the years has been no exception. But the Houston Astros took this tanking approach to a new level never before seen, fielding a team with a payroll of just $22 million in 2013, with only one player making over $1 million. Predictably, the team went 51-111. Minute Maid Park saw many empty seats, and attendance that once topped 3 million per year never exceeded 1.8 million between 2012 and 2014. So they were terrible, obviously, but they were eating their losses and therefore dollars in order to be better in the future, right? Well, not so fast. According to Forbes, the 2013 Houston Astros were the most profitable team in baseball history. What? This fact tends to be overlooked because that Astros team is held up as a model of analytics done right. Those horrible teams were just a prelude to the incredible run that led to a playoff berth in 2015 and a World Series ring in 2017, followed by years and years of success, albeit with the help of some cheating along the way. In the popular imagination, all those losses in between 2012 and 2014 turned into picking first in the amateur draft, which yielded stars like Carlos Correa, George Springer, and Alex Bregman, all pivotal pieces that helped put Houston on their backs and deliver them to the promised land. Wrong. Correa, yes, in 2012, but those first overall picks included Mark Appel in 2013 and Brady Aiken in 2014. In fairness, Appel was traded for closer Ken Giles. Aiken, on the other hand, was a complete bust. In 2015, they picked Alex Bregman second and Kyle Tucker fifth overall, right as the team was poised to explode. General manager Jeff Luhnow was the analytic architect behind this powerhouse. He'd pioneered a data-driven approach in St. Louis and then used it to great effect in Houston. And so, in the minds of many, tanking was really a product of the new analytical approach, where teams correspondingly would invest in scouting and player development based on biomechanical innovations. Yet this lesson didn't necessarily penetrate every front office in baseball. While the Astros did indeed get better and start spending more as they did, many teams were more interested in a different kind of revolution, a capitalistic one, in which their squads could tank publicly with the promise of expenditure after a reset period, only to never truly reset, thereby returning a profit that would make a plutocrat proud. One such owner was Bob Nutting of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Even though Bob Nutting is now one of the most unpopular owners in sports, it wasn't always this way. It's easy to forget that shortly after Nutting acquired the team in 2007, between 2013 and 2015, the Pirates went 280 and 206, and made the postseason every year, for the first time in 2 decades. Nutting had built a baseball academy in the Dominican Republic, and had remodeled the team's spring training digs in Bradenton. All was good. But then, it was like a cash-colored light bulb lit up in Nutting's fevered brain. Already the 10th richest owner in the game, he was entranced by the promise of even greater loot. During that offseason of 2017, the Pirates traded away Garrett Cole and Andrew McCutchen in what can only be termed as a fire sale. The biggest beneficiary was the Astros, who'd already gotten Justin Verlander from the Tigers for 3 prospects that never ended up making it. Then they got Cole for 4 players who've all departed since, with only Joe Musgrove having made any real impact at the big league level, and not for the Pirates. However, at the time, eyebrows were raised. This wasn't a haul typical of years past for a player who was, at the time, the club's ace. The Astros were feasting on the ineptitude and greed of other teams like the Pirates, acquiring elite talent without surrendering a boatload of talent in return. But Nutting wasn't done. He moved Austin Meadows, Tyler Glasnow, and Shane Baz to the Rays for Chris Archer, a deal that many would end up calling the worst trade in modern baseball history. But he was adding salary in this case, right? To try to help his team in a playoff push. Well, not so much. Archer had a set contract, seen at the time as team-friendly, while Meadows, Glasnow, and Baz were all major prospects who had a chance at a big-time payday, courtesy of year-to-year pay raises and eventually arbitration. To this day, the Pirates have already saved millions on the whole ordeal. Glasnow alone will make $25 million in 2024, more than Archer's entire tenure in the yellow and black. Basically, Nutting was allowing the data-driven teams to take his players without much in the way of negotiation, and he didn't really care. Why? Because his team was making a ton of money. Here's how. The Pirates have a loyal fan base, on top of the fact the closest MLB team to Pittsburgh is a 2-hour drive to Cleveland, which sold out Jacobs Field, now Progressive Field, for 455 straight games. To put it simply, Bob had his fans in a vice. He did the smart, if insanely douchey, thing. He covered his payroll through local revenues like ticket sales and such, and then he pocketed his share of the competitive balance and luxury taxes, which worked out to $40 million in 2022, along with the shared pool of local revenue that netted his org another $60 million. That's $100 million of pure profit, money he could have used to sign Tyler Glasnow or Garrett Cole to a long-term deal, but instead put it into the team's and therefore his own pockets. That's why this process is called nutting. According to Forbes, the Pirates are the 8th most profitable team in baseball. Their 2023 payroll of $73 million was 27th in the league. So if you think the Pirates are going to lock up O'Neal Cruz like the Braves did with Ozzie Albies or the D-backs did with Corbin Carroll, think again. Nutting knows what he's doing. His payroll will stay low enough that he'll never even come close to the luxury tax threshold, so he can continue to collect his cash every year. The fortunes of his club be damned. The Pirates were one of 4 teams that the Players Union sued for not using their competitive balance money on salaries. The others were the Rays, Marlins, and A's. All of these teams constantly speak publicly with pride about their ingenuity putting together teams on a budget. Hell, Billy Beane's Moneyball A's of the early 2000s basically have a cult following now. But yet, all of these squads are pocketing excess cash, money that could inevitably be used to make their squads better, or in the case of the Pirates or A's, just above laughable. For the fans of these squads, there is no such luck. The last time any of these teams won the World Series was the Marlins in 2003, and for the Rays, it's never happened even once in their history. A sad track record built on the back of public deception, as their incomplete squads fall in the playoffs year after year. At least the Dodgers, Yankees, and Phillies can claim they tried, investing hundreds of millions of dollars into their failing products in lieu of sitting on their hands and pocketbooks while their wallet grows fatter. Honestly, it's just insulting to the game of baseball. But the city where nutting was turned into an art form is Seattle, home to the only team in MLB history to never even appear in a World Series. Despite this outright embarrassment, the Mariners managed to top the recent Forbes list of most profitable teams, with a yearly profit of $83.8 million. Pretty sweet for a squad that went 21 straight years without making the postseason, and stumbled out of contention late in 2023. How? In a name, Tommy La Stella. No offense, but everything you need to know about how Seattle's been nutting is personified in that 5'11", 180-pound infielder who was brought in last season to add punch to a listless offense. Tommy La Stella has a career WAR of 3.5. In 1,700 big league at-bats, he's hit 40 homers. Oh, and he's now in his mid-30s. Tommy La Stella couldn't play on the Rays or Orioles as a backup infielder, yet the Mariners, fresh off their first postseason appearance in 21 years, decided to add basically just this one former All-Star, with his best years obviously far behind him, to their team. In doing so, they kept their payroll at $137 million, 18th in the league and well below the luxury tax threshold that big city clubs often exceed. That's the insidious nature of nutting. In fairness, the team did part ways with La Stella after 12 games. Not surprisingly, no team picked him up. The better question is, why did the Mariners even go there? What did a young squad have to gain, aside from being able to say they did something over the offseason? As if we don't know the answer by now. You don't just become the most profitable team in the game by spending freely to win. Sure, they traded for Teoscar Hernandez, but it's not like he's a top-tier player destined for a 9-digit contract. Aside from him, they mostly just stayed silent on the trade and free agent markets. The result? The 2023 squad, as we just said above, missed the playoffs again, with the team thoroughly lacking in powerful pieces in the middle of their lineup. Their 4 and 5 hitters, generally some combination of Mike Ford, Eugenio Suarez, and Ty France, none of which posted an OPS over 800. Hell, France and Suarez barely cracked 700. With their league best ERA of 3.74, the Mariners should have glided into the postseason. Instead, they missed the last wildcard spot by a single game. WAR isn't a perfect stat by any means, but do you know what the combined B-WAR of these 3 guys was in the heart of Seattle's lineup? 3.5. That's over doubly less than their main competitor, Texas, had received from Marcus Semien alone. But hey, roughly $85 million can buy a lot of Kleenex to cry into. But at least the Mariners were competitive, something that the once proud Oakland A's can't say. Oh, I'm sure the players were trying to win. The owner, though, had another agenda altogether, with making money at the expense of his local fans being the prime objective. Forbes put the A's as the 5th most profitable team in the game last year, at $62.2 million of profit. The owner, John Fisher, disputes this figure and claims that the team is somehow losing money, which no serious person believes, namely the other MLB owners who pay for competitive balance only to see teams like the A's pocket the money without making improvements. Like last year, when, on opening day, the A's sat last in payroll at a paltry $33 million, less than Anthony Rendon made in 2023. The MLB average was almost 120 million more than that at 150 million. Predictably, the team went 50-112, posting one of the most embarrassing seasons in recent history. The A's want to relocate to Las Vegas after the 2024 season, after failing to shake down the city of Oakland to pay for a new stadium. No one disputes that the Oakland Coliseum is outdated. It's universally seen as one of the, if not the worst ballpark in all of baseball, with floods in the dugouts occasionally, stray cats racing through the stadium, and announcers having to respect the space of rogue raccoons. Yeah, not great. Of course, like we briefly mentioned above, the A's were the original Moneyball team. In recent years, between 2012 and 2020, they appeared in 6 postseasons, with a payroll that ranked near the league's bottom every year. They did so because they had players like Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, Marcus Semien, Liam Hendricks, Chris Bassett, and Sean Manaea, to name just a few. Then came the inevitable nutting, the fire sale that saw the team trade away its best players for pretty much nothing. The Blue Jays and Braves, however, both benefited tremendously from John Fisher's desire to become as profitable as possible. Meanwhile, attendance in Oakland has plummeted to new lows, with the squad drawing fewer than 900,000 fans in 2022 and 2023. The best crowd of last season was during the reverse boycott, when a group of over 27,000 fans showed up to urge Fisher to sell the team. He definitely wasn't listening. It's hard to imagine a more toxic environment to see a game in this year than Oakland. Yet, if you took a peek at those profit numbers as an investor, you wouldn't have been able to tell. Tanking as practiced by the Houston Astros meant losing as part of a long-term strategy to make over an organization from top to bottom. Like we said, investors in player development and scouting and data analytics and roving minor league coaches were a must. The best teams, year in and year out, all have top-notch departments in this regard after all. Then you have teams like the Colorado Rockies. Since expansion in 1993, the Rockies had the 3rd worst record in MLB, with a .466 combined winning percentage. They've never won their division. In the past 12 years, they've appeared in 2 postseasons. They've never won more than 92 games in a season. Yet, the Rockies still own the MLB record for season attendance, drawing 4.4 million in their first season, and topping 2 million every year since 2006. Like the Mariners, they're the only baseball game in town, with fans having to traverse several states to see another MLB team play. The owners are Dick and Charles Monfort, 2 experts in nutting. Execs who deal with the Rockies say the front office feels insular, noting how Colorado still hasn't seemed to embrace the data revolution. During the 2020 season, for example, its analytics department was down to 1 person. By contrast, the Rays employ 15 or more on a per-year basis. They also haven't gone big on international signees, preferring to instead sink dollars into veteran relievers far past their primes. On the surface, no one can say that they don't spend. Between 2015 and 2020, they doled out $300 million to 19 players, and for that investment, they got zilch. The war of those 19 was negative in the composite, which is a stat that's hard to fathom and shows the complete lack of analytical tools in the front office. The team has shown it can draft hitters. Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, Charlie Blackmon, and Troy Tulowitzki were all drafted and developed by the team. But the organization has had a terrible time drafting and developing pitchers, which is huge since Coors Field bloats ERA. You'd think they'd have an army of Ivy League math geniuses cutting up video and digesting scouting reports on the best pitchers available to draft or sign. Since 2010, the Rockies have developed just 1 all-star pitcher, German Marquez. In that same time, they've spent many first-round picks on pitchers who've flamed out with barely an impact on the big club. Then there was the recent Arenado trade, a real nutting event. The Rockies gave up the heart and soul of their franchise to the Cardinals without the Cardinals coughing up any headliner or elite prospect. Along with the Archer trade, it's seen by many as one of the most blatantly cheap moves in baseball history. Meanwhile, the Monfort brothers were laughing all the way to the bank. Despite their glaring ineptitude and obvious lack of care for their franchise, the value of the Rockies has soared past $1.5 billion in recent years, a return of 426% on their original investment. It can't be said enough. Certain MLB owners are greedy and have allowed their franchises to wither on the vine while earning tidy sums mostly financed by big market teams, who themselves aren't thrilled to see their brethren line their pockets with ill-gotten gains. The question is, how do you solve the problem of nutting? Maybe abstention would work. Just don't do it. Instead of keeping the money, Bob Nutting, sign some of your assets to long-term deals before they blow up and you can't afford them. The Rays, for all their own issues, do this routinely. You have the resources to become one of the game's most innovative clubs. Use them for that purpose. Invest in data and overseas scouts, Monfort bros. Your team operates like it's 1966. There's no reason you can't follow the Orioles playbook and load up on young talent. Bring in outside voices and create an atmosphere where teams of brilliant minds bat ideas around. I'm sure there are data analysts in Denver that would do a better job than your current staff, most of which is composed of empty chairs at the moment. Hire them. And perhaps most of all, John Stanton. No more moves like signing Tommy La Stella. Your pitching staff is incredible. You have a true superstar in J-Rod. And you have impressive role players like Cal Riley and JP Crawford, all of whom deserve to play in October. Stop being so cheap and actually spend some of your huge profits on a big bat to slot in the middle of that lineup. If these guys don't change voluntarily, they may soon be made to mandatorily. The Yankees, Dodgers, Phillies, and Mets, and basically all of the other big market teams, are seething beneath the surface right now, waiting for some measure to come along that will strip their fellow owners of the ability to swipe money under the table. If such a thing comes along, you can bet your bottom dollar the consequences will be much more severe than a slap on the wrist. The entire system may be subject to reinvention, again putting the smaller market teams at a huge disadvantage. No one wants that, least of all the fans of these teams, who, as always, seem to be the real victims of the politics of owners' greed. Now, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and click this playlist for more essay content just like this. Have a great day, everyone.